Good morning, everybody. It's your Self Shift crew back for another short podcast. You got Patrick here, Doug,
Hey, everybody.
Derek,
Good morning, everyone.
and it is another gray, cold, rainy Saturday morning in actually early March. Today's March 2nd. So we've got an interesting topic for today that we're going to jump right into. One that is actually really critical, especially if you're a younger viewer. And the topic today is that every second that passes is one that you can't recover. Or maybe better said by Benjamin Franklin, lost time is never found again. And we're going to hit this from a couple of angles, basically talking about some of the problems or the issues that you may encounter if you are wasting time, how to say no, the advantages of saying no, making sure that you're staying on your purpose, and then we'll give some practical examples that we've discovered over the years about optimizing your time. So one of the things, and I'll kick it off and shoot it over to the guys, but is, and this was kind of a tough lesson for me, is learning that time is not infinite. I like to give the example of an airport runway. When I was a younger man, when I would look out on the horizon of my life, it appeared that there was no end in sight to the runway. It just went on forever. And then when I got in my late 40s, maybe even around 50, as I looked forward, I recognized that there was a light, just kind of blinking way out in the distance, but realized that time is not infinite and life is not infinite, and that I needed to make sure that I was on my purpose, doing things that I needed to get done, and not waiting for things to happen, but instead making things happen. So that was really, really important to me. Another key thing that I found is learning to prioritize your time. And you've got to say no to things, no things that are distracting you from your purpose that are just not critical. I know this is difficult for folks, and it is for me, and I'm sure for probably Derek and Doug as well. Probably not so much anymore, but it's a certain point in your life. You want to say no to everything. You have a fear of missing out. So from an overall perspective, especially the younger viewers, make sure that you're not wasting your time, or scrolling through your phone or whatever the case may be. Because as we're saying before, or as we said at the beginning, every second that passes is non-recoverable. So you want to make the most of your life, make the most of your seconds. Derek, your thoughts?
Well, I think that, over the years, as you were saying, when you're younger, you have a less of a connection with the concept of time, and you feel like it is infinite. And I feel like that as you progress through your 20s and your 30s, 40s, 50s, as you continue evolving into maturing, we should say, you end up in a situation where time becomes very precious to you because you realize your point, that beacon is out there. And I would say that, the thing that happened, in my 30s as I transitioned into my 40s was I really made a deep connection back with time from the perspective through loss, like, you know, through having some challenges that come forth in life. And you realize that how you've wasted so much time worrying or striving for things that don't really matter and using your time to do that. And you realize that all those things you've been chasing over time has been fleeting. And so when you really like you come into a new awareness, you connect with time differently through some form of challenge or loss, through reflection, all those things we've been talking about. You have a different connection with time, and going forward, you want to connect with time differently. And the fact that you want to create value for your life with every second that comes forth and happens in a day.
Doug?
Yeah, exactly what you're saying there, Derek, is, because time is finite, your time is valuable. And so, how do you want to get the value out of that time? I think that was a big learning journey for myself. Again, because we talk about it all the time on here. If you're wasting your time, you're wasting the right now, worrying about something that happened in the past or being very anxious about an upcoming thing, you're kind of wasting those times. So how do you recapture that time, and how do you assign value to that time? I guess different things are valuable to different people, but for me, the thing that I've done as I've aged is, or of late really, is savoring, recognizing in the now that I'm enjoying something and savoring it. Really, I guess trying to think of good examples. But as I go about my day, just recognizing that I'm enjoying what I'm doing, or enjoying out to dinner with my wife, or even simple things like petting a dog. It's like savoring that time, savoring that now, and recognizing the value of now. The other point I'd make is I'm also I think you mentioned this in your comments, but realizing what you're passionate about, and trying to find more opportunity to invest in that passion, because there's a concept of flow, and flow is like you get into the flow, you're working on something, it's something you enjoy, and time is just, you lose track of time because you're so enjoying it. So there's been times in my career when I was writing an application, or doing some data analysis, and I don't know, that sounds geeky, but you know doing it, I look up and like the work days passed, and
Yeah.
it did not feel like a waste. It didn't feel like a bad use of time. It was just incredibly enjoyable. So seek out your passions, and be sure to uh, recognize the value of now, and savor the moments.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. So I'm gonna double click on how the journey that I've been on as it relates to making sure that I'm making the best use of my time. And I adopted the model, which I'm sure I picked up from somebody else or book or whatever, is thinking about time as currency, right? Um, and currency is not infinite. Um, it can be plentiful, but it's not infinite. And how are you going to spend your time? Think about it as if there were dollars or whatever the case may be. How are you going to spend that time? And once I started thinking about the fact that it was finite, not infinite, and that I was the decision maker, I controlled for the most part. I mean, we all got jobs, and that there's going to be some demands there that you have to account for, and that you don't have the ultimate decision making on. But for the most part, we control how we spend our time as currency, right? And that's when I recognized that, I'm responsible for my life, and I'm responsible for how I spend my time. That's when the ability to really focus on my purpose became crystal clear. And I really got serious about it. Made a fairly significant life change a couple of years ago, going from a Fortune 50 organization to a much smaller organization, which had a mission that I was very much aligned to. But that was part of my purpose, something that I needed to do to move myself forward. Started to retool, take some additional classes, and really make sure that I was spending time on things that were important to me and that were important to my mission, right? And not spending it on things that were not important to me or that were time sinks. And closely related to that, again, is learning to say sometimes when you're looking about how you're going to spend your time, you're going to say no to things. Like, for example, certain groups or clubs that I had been involved in for years and years and years, which I came to realize that I wasn't that aligned with, and that I didn't want to spend 2 hours a week doing something which that wasn't as critical to my mission as I thought it was, or that it was, in the past, and devote that time to something else, like taking online classes, or learning some new skills, or spending time with my family, or going to the gym, things that are really, really, really important to me. So once I started thinking about time not as this abstract concept, that time is just something that's plentiful and just out there, is really started thinking about it as a tangible asset, right? It's not something you can necessarily put your hands around, but you can measure it, right, with clocks and stuff like that. And you can also, with a little bit of planning, be able to use it much more wisely as opposed to just squandering it. So, so that's, from my perspective, thinking about it in that way has really helped me implement some things. And I'm going to go through maybe those after we go around the horn here. But from my perspective, the currency thing really, really helped. Go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, I would say, I read a great book one time called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if you've heard that. He's a spiritual teacher, and
Yep.
in that discipline. And one of the things there that really connected me back with time is really looking at when you spend time doing something, or you spend time with someone, how does that make you feel? And I think that, in those moments, you're able to inventory if you're doing something that is just creating misery or frustration or disappointment in you, then you're not making a valuable use of your time. Or if you're spending time with someone that's a drag on your energy, that's creating negative emotions such as anger or upset in some way, then you have to, it's not valuable for you. So inventory your time and start crossing off the list that of things that no longer serves your best interest, as far as using that time, the time that you want, the precious time that you have. Use, inventory it and get rid of the things that's no longer serving that best use of your time, that serves your best purpose and interest to move you forward.
Doug?
Yeah. I guess building on, again, I guess I'm really focused on the value of time and recognizing that value maybe as I've grown, as I've aged and those kind of things. But, a couple other concepts I'd add into it is like, don't wish that time away.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I was in a hurry to grow up. It was always like, I want to get to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, or if I've been in a difficult situation, I've just been kind of sitting there waiting for it to end. Like, I'll just endure it, right? But as you guys are saying, like, be stingy with your time and make sure
Mm,
you're, go ahead and decide, like, I'm going to exit this situation, right? Or why am I here? I don't need to be here. I don't need to be spending this time on these things. And, even to make it a little more crystallized, as a parent, when you first have a child and things like that, it can be some long days, right? When the child is crying through the night, or, going through teething, or there's just different parts of their childhood that you're like, this is tough. Parenting is tough. And you might kind of wish to get past that part. And
mhm,
I guess my message is, don't wish that time away. Like, savor it, enjoy it, because while it's, long days and long nights, it's short years. And before you know it, that finite resource of time has passed, and you can't get it back. And so I guess my message here is, savor the time, and don't wish it away. Make sure you're using it on things you're passionate about, and make sure you're enjoying it and savoring it when you're going through it.
mhm,
Yeah, really, really key points. So I'm going to triangulate a couple of things. And Derek, you mentioned something that I did as far as just doing an inventory of time.
mhm,
And I did this a couple of years ago and came up actually with, first of all, I was quite astonished how much time I was wasting on a daily basis. Um, and really, because I love to optimize things. I work in the software engineering space, as all of us do, actually. And so optimization and that type of thing is part of our DNA, I think, and making sure that we're getting the most out of things that are available. So as I started looking at, how I was spending my currency, my time as currency, I came up with I'm going to mention like four of them here, things that have really, really helped me. The first one is since I have a bit of a commute to the office, it's about 50 minutes each way. Um, and for a long period of time, that was mostly spent just listening to, quite honestly, podcasts, such as this one, right? In the car, which is a good way to do it, actually, because I've learned a lot. So I focus on things that I'm interested in. And so as opposed to listening to mindless things, I put in podcasts that are um, in tune with my mission and on purpose and that type of thing. But the other thing that I've done is I've learned to schedule phone calls. So I can, basically talk through the phone system in my car. And since I've got employees across the globe, that is a really good time to reach people in India or in Europe and actually have conversations, catch up with them via the call. And so that's really allowed me to get ahead. By the time I get to the office, I may have already contacted three of my folks, you know, understood what they were working on overnight or their daytime, my nighttime, and able to plan for the rest of the day really, really easily. And the same on the way home. I'm able to, catch up with employees that may be in a time zone that's behind us and also catch up with friends or other folks that historically I've been not been good at keeping up relationships. So that really has helped. The podcast plus making some efficiency as it relates to driving in the car. Another thing that has been really key, and it's been implemented, as a matter of fact, in our company, is making sure that we are optimizing meeting times.
Mm.
There is a tendency, and I'm sure there's some famous law from some managerial consultant that says if a meeting is scheduled for an hour and there's only 5 minutes of content, the folks in the meeting will make sure that it goes an hour, even if it doesn't need to be. So
Mhm.
I've implemented a plan is I very seldom schedule meetings that are more than 15 to 30 minutes,
Mhm.
so that it's focused, it's optimized. Now, if it's an all-day planning session, yeah, maybe. But ensuring folks, it's a crisp, concise conversation and get to resolution. If it needs to go longer than that, that's not a big deal. But just scheduling our meetings as a default, I've even challenged my changed my Google Calendar so the default time is like 15 minutes, so that I'm making sure that I'm optimizing time there, because it, it will, if it's scheduled for an hour, it will last an hour regardless of the content. The next thing is that I kind of mentioned this a second ago, but I cannot overstate how difficult this was for me, but also how beneficial it was for me. And that is um, coordinating my time with what is important to me, including leaving some groups that I was involved in. Some groups that just wasn't a good use of my time. And these are groups that I had led. I'd been the leader in these groups and been on boards and that type of thing. But as I've changed, Derek, you called this out, and I think Doug, you did as well. As you grow, you become more aligned with your goals and your mission and that type of thing. And if these weren't aligned, and if something else was, then I would spend the currency, time as currency, on the other item as well. So that was difficult for me. I'm not the type of person that says no easily. I'm historically been kind of a yes guy, right? But as I've learned that time is valuable and it's my responsibility to manage my time, I've left groups. I've also transparently ended relationships that just wasn't beneficial and wasn't a good use of my time. And a lot of this goes back to recognizing time as currency and learning to say no, which can be uncomfortable. It is. And there are books out there about this, learning to say no and how beneficial it can be. But it's not as traumatic as we think it ought to be. And a lot of times it will actually garner respect. If you tell people no and you give a legitimate reason, don't hem haul around or whatever. Hey, I've got to go do this. I'm going to go study this tonight. I can't do this. And I'm not saying be a jerk and bail out at the last second. I'm saying be thoughtful and politeful and saying no to things that are not critical to you and saying yes to things that are. The other thing, and then I promise I'll kick it back over, is staying focused. And especially on the work side, this is something that, depending upon your organization, is really easy to get away with. Even in conversations in the hallway or in your office, at your desk or whatever, stay focused on what you need to get done. There's a time and a place for chit chatting, and I'm not saying people shouldn't chit chat and stuff like that, but learning how to have a focused conversation in a pleasant, friendly manner is an art form, as opposed to just meandering and going over left, right, up and down and that type of thing. So that one maybe requires a little bit of finesse, but making sure that you're being polite, friendly, but staying on task, staying on focus, and then getting back to the task at hand is really, really important. I know that was a lot, but I'm going to throw that out there. I don't know if Derek got any other thoughts or add to the list or.
Well, as you were talking there, I was reminded, when it comes to your time, I mean, you're the one that gets to have the say in how you use it. And, often, like you said, we feel bad when we tell people no, but, it goes back to, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And at the end of the day, you really don't owe anyone an explanation of standing for your time that you see as valuable and the way you want to spend it. And so that would lead me to say that just you could do a little simple, quick inventory of your day, like yesterday, and how you spent your time, and make two columns, yes and no, and say I said yes to this and I shouldn't have, or I said no to this and I really should have done that, as far as what you wanted, and just start inventorying it. Very simple. You can That would get you in a discipline of being able to say yes and become aware of what you're saying yes to and who you're saying no to, and it's okay. I mean, you don't have to get over it. If you say no to someone and they give you a hard time, that's their problem, not yours. And
Yeah.
I would say that that is something that takes a lot of growth because we're conditioned differently than that. But it's okay to say no to people.
And I would also throw in there, Derek, the journaling. That can be part of your journaling. What
Yes.
you said yes to, and you should have said no, and vice versa. So part of journaling.
Yes.
Doug.
Yeah, I'm going to expand on your time as currency point to say that how you spend your time is an investment. And so it may be cumulative over time. And to build on that a little bit, like sometimes direction, or a lot of times direction, is more important than speed. So again, when you understand what you value, when you understand what your passion is, or you set a goal that you want to get to somewhere by a certain time, aligning how you spend your time towards achieving that goal, that's the investment you're making. You're investing it in yourself, and you're growing the value of your time and of you over that time. So again, like I go through this with one of my sons. I kind of am saying, hey, it's all right, the journey you're on, that maybe it's taking longer than you thought it was going to take, because you're headed in the right direction, right? You've learned along the way and you've made adjustments, and you're headed in the right direction. Don't worry about how fast you get there, because like I was saying earlier, don't wish that time away. Don't, enjoy the journey you're on. Make sure you're reaping the value of your investments and you're seeing that growth over time.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really key point. Really key point. So and I know we're getting close on time here. So I'm gonna put a statement out here, and then we'll go around the horn really quickly. And maybe to sum up some of the points that we've had on the call here today: learn from the past, don't live in it, live in the present, and use your time wisely as currency and an investment. And journal, for goodness sake. So, Derek, any last thoughts, man?
Yeah, I think, I'd say 3 words to sum it up. Protect, prioritize, and be proactive, in relation to your time. And just start with that. Like, how am I going to protect it today? How am I going to, what am I going to prioritize today is to make great use of my time. And then how does all of doing all this make me more proactive, and how does it make me feel in my life?
Yeah. Doug?
Yeah, and I'll say again, building on the be present, right? So like we always talk about it, wasting your time worrying about what you could have done different in the past doesn't help. But the thing I'll say is you're not guaranteed that future. And so really enjoy the moment of now. Enjoy who you're spending time with. Be stingy about who you spend time with and the relationships you invest in. But you don't know how much time you got left. So make sure you're valuing the time of now.
Well said. And one other thing that you meant to say.
Yeah. And, be kind to yourself. So
Be kind to
again, I
yourself.
spend a lot of
Absolutely.
time questioning how I spend my time, or, things I did in the past and all that. Be kind to yourself. Treat yourself like you treat your friends and your family. Be kind to yourself.
Well said. Well said. And remember, folks, practical personal transformation is possible. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us today, and we will talk to you next week. Have a good week. Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.